Everybody, welcome today to a conversation we're going to have with Tony Javier with 10X TV. And Tony specializes in radio and TV marketing for real estate investors. And we're just going to have an open marketing conversation today about the benefits of radio and TV and marketing in general. So, Tony, welcome to the call, and let's keep going.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. I'm excited to talk marketing, one of my favorite subjects.
So why don't we start out talking about you, give yourself a little plug, talk about what you do and how you do it, a little bit about radio and TV.
Yeah, sounds good. I've been a real estate investor since 2001, so I've been in the game for quite a while. I still invest in real estate to this day. So I've been buying, flipping houses. I'm a big buy and hold person. I actually started burring properties back in 2001 before BRRRR was actually a thing. And so over the years, I've realized that there's a smart way to do business and marketing, and there's the harder way to do business and marketing. So I struggled quite a bit, for the first 9 or 10 years of kind of the business development side of it, and kind of hit rock bottom and decided I needed to start doing things smarter. And so ended up building out a team. Within a few years, I was able to kind of step out of that business, and it kind of runs on its own, and it's allowed me to do other things. And during that process, I actually discovered TV commercials. So I started doing TV back in 2012, and someone had introduced me to a media buyer, and they were crushing TV with their other business. And they told me about TV and all the benefits of it, and how, everyone treats you like a celebrity. And that was actually the only marketing channel they had, which Jeff and I were talking about before we started recording. You definitely don't want one lead channel, especially in real estate investing. For his construction business, it made sense. He had a 6-month wait list, that kind of thing. And so he introduced me to his media buyer, and his media buyer said, hey, I think I know who your avatar is, who you're trying to go after. So he went to the stations, negotiated some rates for me, came back, and he said, for $3,000, I'm in a fairly small market of Wichita, Kansas. For a budget of $3,000, we can get you hundreds of commercials. I can't remember the exact number. It was probably like 300, 400 commercials a month. And when he was coming back to me, I thought he'd be, at least 5,000 or at least 10,000 a month, right? And so kind of blew my mind that I could be on TV and kind of be a celebrity in my market for that little ad spend. And so first month we spent $3,000 and made $30,000 that first month. And so, a lot of people think that TV is just branding, and I did before I started TV commercials for myself and before I talked to that other gentleman. And so throughout the years, people have been like, again, this was 2012, and I joined Collective Genius Mastermind in 2015. I was only one of 2 people doing TV out of over 100 real estate investors that were high-level investors, and even joined a mastermind 3 or 4 years ago, Investor Fuel, and there was only one other person doing TV. So throughout the years, people are like, why aren't other people doing TV? It sounds like you're doing well. Why don't you show other people? And so finally in 2020, I reached out to a bunch of people that I knew, and I said, hey, I've discovered TV. I feel like I perfected it. We know what shows work. We know what stations work. We've tested many different scripts, and it's been crushing for us for 8 years at this point. So I asked other real estate investors, hey, what if I did the media for you? What if we went in, we scripted it for you, we negotiated rates in your market, and basically did 95% of the work for you, and see how it goes. And I wasn't sure what to expect. And lo and behold, pretty much most of the investors so I reached out to 10 investors, 8 said yes pretty quickly. And out of those 8 investors, 7 of them still 5 years later are running TV commercials, and it performed very well right out of the gate. And so from then it's like, hey, I've got something here. And so we now have over 100 real estate investors that we help with TV commercials around the country. And I feel like it's one of the top marketing channels, and it pairs very well with direct mail. In fact, we get quite a few deals each year where we send out direct mail. They, may get 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of direct mail. And they said they called us and only us because we're on TV and they know who we are.
Yeah, that's a huge point too, by the way, and it gives you credibility. It's one of the reasons why we do videos like this and put it on YouTube for the same reason, because we're trying to sell to real estate investors, as you are too, with your product. And we want them to know that, hey, we know what we're talking about. We're the main guys out there. And when you're on TV, you're famous. It's that simple. Same with writing a book. We're also in the printing business. We publish books. And I always tell people, write a book and you're an instant expert. Doesn't even matter if your book's any good or not. Just the fact you wrote a book makes you an expert.
Yeah, 100%.
I have several books for that exact reason. So they're not even that good at books, but I'm an expert now. But that's a huge point you said, because, one of the key tenets of marketing is touching someone multiple times to get their attention. Because the most important thing in marketing is when it comes time for the person to do what it is you sell or what you want, to buy your product, they think of you first. And the way you get them to think of you first is you stay in front of them a lot. There's no better way to be on TV or radio all the time.
Yeah, 100%. So the thing about TV, the perception of it is it's really expensive. It's just for branding. You're not going to be on TV that often. So when he came back to me, my media buyer back in 2012, and if he would have said, you're going to get a few hundred commercials a month, I'd be like, that'd be at least 10 or 15 grand a month. But he was able to do it for a very, very small ad spend. And that's a small market. So I don't want anybody to think that, for $3,000 in every market that you can get on TV. But usually, a lot of markets between 5 and 7 grand a month, you can still get a pretty good schedule for that. But yeah, people are seeing you hundreds of times, potentially a month. You are the celebrity, just like you said. Like, once people are on video and they put themselves out there, it automatically puts them up on a pedestal. So, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, once you start putting your face out there, again, it adds that extra credibility. And then, TV is the thing that people know the most because TV's been around for a long time. And there's the perception that you have to be a big brand to be on TV, that you have to be a big business, that you have to spend a bunch of money. And really, it's not that way. But TV is not easy. There are, many little components that you do have to get right. And so I feel like there's little to no competition with TV in most markets. Again, because of the perception that people think you need to spend a lot of money and all those types of things. Even if you say TV's a great marketing channel, there's still a lot of steps to get there. So unless you know how to script it, unless you know what stations to buy and those types of things, it's a lot harder, as opposed to cold calling, texting, those types of things. You can, listen to a podcast, you can buy a list, you can buy one of those platforms, and all of a sudden you're reaching out to sellers. And TV's just not as easy, and there's a higher barrier of entry to it.
So one of my questions is, you mentioned budget, because we get that all the time in mail. We always talk about, anytime you're doing any kind of marketing, the first question is, what's your budget? How much you got to spend every month? And out of that, how many deals do you expect to get? Those are the two most basic questions. Now, I can say in direct mail is very targeted. So we spend a lot of time dialing in lists and really looking at the people we want to go after, because it's expensive to send a piece of mail these days, and it keeps getting more expensive because the post office keeps raising the postage. Like they're raising it again in about 2 weeks. But in your world, what do you think? If a guy spends $5 grand a month in radio, TV, do you have a number that he could kind of expect to get a deal out of that, or 2 deals? And I realize their ability to close has a major impact on that. So
for sure.
That's a given, okay?
Yeah.
But you sort of have averages. How many leads could a guy expect out of, when I say lead, I'm defining that as a phone call. Somebody calls in from the ad and says, hey, talk to me. How many of those, you spend $5 grand, what do you think you get out of that?
Yeah, great questions. It's super broad. We could launch someone $5 grand a month, and I'm going to say 5 to 7, because most markets are minimum more closer to 7 grand a month. But let's say 5 to 7 grand a month. Most real estate investors should expect, I'd say, a minimum of 10, probably 30. 10 to 30 is probably the range that we see most of our clients as far as, lead volume. Actually, we launched someone, you would know them, but they're in a small market in Texas. They're in boardroom with us, and they spend 7 grand a month in a small market in Texas. And I don't know how many leads they got, but they got 13 contracts in their first month. That's probably one of the better launches we've done. So, someone may get 10 leads and do 2 deals, and then, that small market in Texas, I knew it was going to crush, because I love those small markets where you can spend a small, and actually 7 grand in that market is a pretty hefty ad spend. So he was getting a lot of commercials. So yeah, 10 to 30. And then, most of our clients are doing at least a deal their first month and making money. Every once in a while, we'll get a client that it takes, 2 to 3 months to start locking up deals. So yeah, to answer your question, 10 to 30 leads. Some get 50 to 60, even up to 100 in their first month. But 10 to 30 is probably a pretty safe estimate. And then my goal is, I would love to get 1 to 3 deals per month on that ad spend.
And that's what I can tell you is compared to, I know a little bit about, of course I know direct mail, but I also know a little bit about PPC and PPL and what it takes in terms of how much you have to spend to get deals. And you spend $5,000 to get a deal in any of that type of marketing, you're doing pretty well. So if you can get more than a deal in 5,000 through what you're doing, that's really good. Now, one of the other questions that comes up is talking about targeting versus not targeting. Some people do billboard. We buy ugly houses. People are famous for the billboards. And we do business with a lot of those franchisees that are unhappy with the marketing. One of the things they don't like is with a billboard, they get all kinds of calls that are all bogus calls that really aren't serious prospects. So they got to filter through all that to get to the good, serious prospects. Do you see that in radio and TV, the same type of dynamic?
Yeah, so we do billboards as well. I don't recommend billboards to anybody unless they're doing at least probably 3 to 4 marketing channels, and one of them, if not 2 of them, radio and TV, because they pair well together. Once you start doing mass media, the billboards just add that extra layer of credibility and kind of stay in front of your clients. And so with TV specifically, so I'm talking more about TV. Radio is more of an add-on. So we can definitely start people with radio, but we like to start them with TV because TV is more visual, it's more powerful. And then once you got radio on that, it pairs well together. So with TV directly, the great thing about TV is it is one of those channels where people feel like they know you, like you, and trust you. So they're not just going to call you and waste your time and just say, what is my house worth? Whereas when someone gets a cold call or a text, or some people may even just say, what is my house worth? And then a real estate investor may pop up and they enter their information in there and they're really just trying to see what their house is worth. With TV, we don't see that. We don't see a lot of tire kickers. People that call are typically very serious. We see that our clients are saying that they get 1 deal for every 5 to 10 calls that they get.
Really?
So they're not having to sift through a ton of calls and leads in order to get a deal. The other thing that we see is that profit margins are higher. So we've seen this in our business where our profit per deal from TV has been higher many years. And I think a lot of that has to do with we're the only one that's called a lot. So as opposed to, some other marketing channels, they may call PPC, they may Google and call 5 different investors. Whereas TV, you're kind of hitting them at the right time. And so they're going to start with you, talk with you, you're credible, you're the celebrity in their eyes. And so they're going to try and do business with you first. Then obviously, if you can't do a deal, they might start calling other people. And then also, even if we are competing against other people, because of our credibility, because people feel like they know us, like us, and trust us, we feel like we can negotiate better. So we've actually had many times where people have said, hey, you're $5,000 lower than these other people. Can you come up on your offer? And we're just like, sorry, we can't. And they're like, well, okay, we're going to go with you anyway. These other guys, we're not sure who they are. We've seen you for many years. We know you're credible. And a lot of our clients are saying the same thing as well, that that's what people are kind of telling them, is that they feel like they know you better, so that they're willing to go with you over the competition if your offers are very similar.
Now, that's a key point you're bringing up too. And I don't think a lot of people realize you both are an investor and you are selling radio and TV to people. And that's important. We're in the same boat. I'm an investor. Most of we call them coaches. They're sales guys or coaches. Almost every one of them is also an investor. So we not only do mail, we also use mail in our own business.
Yep.
You're doing the same thing. That's huge because you can truly speak from knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. And like the comment you just made, that's speaking of actually people calling you for your real estate business.
Yeah, you said something key. You said a marketing campaign, a lot of it depends on how the client is handling the phone calls, right?
Right. Yes.
And so when I launched 10X TV back in 2020, I reached out to investors that I knew, and I knew they had legit businesses, right? They weren't all perfect by any means, but I know based on working with them now, especially for 5 years, that they're pretty dialed in. And so that's another great thing, is when someone comes to us and they're like, hey, something's not clicking or whatever, we can look at their numbers. We know what our numbers are. We're working deals all the time, so we can give them tips on how to maybe answer the calls more, or the speed to lead thing. You think most people would know, the speed to lead game, but we have to coach a lot of our clients on, hey, when these deals come in, even though you may be the only one called on these deals, you need to treat it like a PPC lead and act like they're filling out 5 different forms and you need to call them right away. Yeah, to your point, I love being in the game because we know what's going on behind the scenes. We know what's going on with us. And then obviously we get to see what all of our other clients are doing and then be able to kind of coach them on what we've been doing the last 24 years in our business.
There's a point you brought up. This is sort of unrelated, but we also have a division in our company. We call it the Done For You division, REI Complete. And then part of that, we answer the phones as well. Not only do the mail, but we answer the incoming calls. And then we don't close the deals, but we handle the incoming lead. We vet the lead, we ask them a bunch of questions, we feed it into the CRM and all that. So we set up our customers so they can make the closing call, so to speak.
I like that.
And we found through our statistics, I just found this, I said recently in the last 9 months, so we do millions and millions of pieces of mail every month, and we have millions of data points that we have calls coming in. When we do this, we hook somebody up in the system. We don't answer the phone for everybody. Some go through our system and we just track KPIs. They don't answer the phone, they answer their own calls. We know when they answer their own calls or not. We found out sort of by accident that on average, and I'm talking over tens of thousands of phone calls, investors only answer the phone 45% of the time. 55% of the time they miss the call, which I was blown away when I saw that. But since that happened, that was about 6 months ago, I realized that. I've been talking to people about this in the boardroom and other places saying, is this unreasonable? I'm talking about guys that have staffs, they have people that answer the phone. And I'm saying, you think that's right? And they're saying, yeah, that's probably right. Because people are busy. Number one, they work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week mostly, maybe a little longer. But so their staff's not answering the phone at night and on the weekends. And on top of that, they're busy. They're on the phone talking to people. If you're on the phone talking to somebody and a call comes in, probably not going to answer it. We also found out that the follow-up on most investors is terrible. And this is to your point, but call people back. Most don't do a very good job of that. They're busy. They have good intentions, but they don't do it. So statistically, half the marketing money is literally being thrown in the trash just because people don't properly handle the phone.
Yeah, I can 100% believe that statistic. In fact, we have a client, he's doing, I think he did over 200 deals last year. And I'm trying to remember his numbers. I think he said, someone asked him that question, what is your answer rate? So for him, answer rate was, you either answer the phone call or when someone fills out a form, you get back to them within like 3 minutes or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he was like, gosh, it's got to be like 90%. And someone's like, you should go dive in and track those numbers and then look at it. And pretty much what you said, he figured out it was like closer to like 50%, that 50% of the calls were either answered or form fills were talked to within 3 minutes. I think it was a 3-minute period. It could have been a little bit longer or it could have been a little less. And so he hammered his team for 6 to 12 months, tracked it. And he said within that time period, within about 12 months, they got it up to closer to 90% and our volume doubled with the same amount of leads, right?
Well, it's because it's a couple things that happen there. Number one, you're actually talking to them. So of course that's going to do better. But the speed to lead, you said that. If you answer the phone, that's faster. So you're going to talk to them more and it's so obvious. But it's unbelievable to me how many investors don't even think about that. And they assume they're doing way better than they are. In fact, to your point, we had a similar case. It's a big investor who's got a staff doing well. He's making money. And we told him that. Our numbers showed he was answering the phone 20% of the time. They're terrible. And he said, there's no way. That you're crazy, your data's wrong. But he was willing to at least listen. So he tracked it himself for a long enough period that he came back and said, I can't believe it, you're right. It's that bad. So he ended up switching to our phone team. And he's blown away. His results have more than doubled just because we're now answering the phone. We don't answer 100%, we're pretty close to it. The point of the whole thing is answering the phone and dealing with the phone calls is a huge part of success in any business, but especially in real estate. A lot of it's done by phone. They're calling in and you got to take it from there.
And it's interesting, now that I know what I know working with so many clients, when someone says something doesn't work, like, direct mail doesn't work or TV doesn't work or radio doesn't work or something doesn't work in my market, most of the time I'm like, it's probably an acquisitions issue. It's a lead management issue. You know what I mean?
Work is defined too. When you say it doesn't work, because we deal with this all the time too, 100% of the time direct mail works and 100% of the time radio and TV works. It just comes down to the numbers make sense for you. Can you make it work at a cost point where you can make a profit when you close a deal? Well, if somebody says it doesn't work, really it just means that they're not making the numbers work, and it's usually on them.
Yeah, there's literally working with hundreds of real estate investors with their TV commercials. I can only remember one time when I felt like TV wasn't working. Like literally for 6 months, they weren't getting any calls, like barely any calls. But interesting enough, the guy that I was just mentioning, who doing over 200 deals a year, he came back to us a year later and he implemented a bunch of marketing and he started TV again and he started crushing it out of the gate. So I don't know if it was just weird timing with his market. And then also he has a bunch of marketing out there as well. So then he adds TV to it and then that helps as well. But you're right. I think most of the time when you launch a marketing campaign, as long as the person knows what they're doing, you're spending enough money and you're giving enough time, there's no reason it shouldn't work. 9 times out of 10, it's probably a lead management issue.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things we talked about before we got on the call here too is that I've been saying for years, if you're not using direct mail as part of your comprehensive marketing strategy, you're leaving money on the table. And that relates to something you said earlier. I'm not trying to necessarily plug direct mail, or I guess I am. But when you're in something like, whether it's radio, TV, or a billboard, or any sort of advertising that's not targeted, you're just putting ads out there, the spend is sort of, you can control your spend, but you can't control how many people call you. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but let's say I'm doing TV ads and I'm spending $5,000 a month and I say, okay, this is working for me, I want to do more. Let's double my ad spend. Can I expect double the leads? Does it work that way?
That's a great question. It depends. We have had that happen before. And actually, when someone doubles their ad spend, we don't do that right away. That, to me, that's kind of throwing money down the drain. You want to test it. So if someone starts with us at $7,000 a month, they're doing well. We increase them maybe to 9,000, 10,000. We'll do incremental increases. In fact, we had one client was spending 15,000 in a pretty big market and he wanted to jump it to 50. And we're like, we totally advise against that. And he's like, it's my money. I want you guys to do it. We implemented it for him. He actually didn't quite double, but it went up pretty close to proportional. And then his ego got to him. He's like, all right, I'm gonna do 80 grand. And then all of a sudden he does 80 grand and he starts doing a little bit less than what 50 grand was doing.
You know, we found that we do for my business, we do all kinds of marketing. We use direct mail, of course, but we don't use radio and TV because it's not appropriate for what we do. But we do social media, we do Google, we do all kinds of stuff. Especially in social media, it's definitely not scalable. I mean, spending more money. In fact, we had the same thing happen with Google. We were doing well. We doubled our PPC click and we actually got less leads, which made no sense to me.
I've heard that a lot from people lately.
Yeah.
That they increase their ad spend quite a bit. And I think what happens is the quality goes down because if you tell Google you want to spend a certain amount of money, they're going to try and figure out how to spend it. So yeah, sometimes less is more.
But back to your original point you made early in the discussion about, I think direct mail combined with radio TV would be an excellent partnership because number one, you can justify the radio TV spend with the deals you get specifically from that. Plus, you get the credibility factor that makes someone pay attention to you more when they get a direct mail piece because they heard of you. It's got to make, I would think it would make both of those work better. The direct mail would help the radio TV, and I think they would work together very well.
Yeah, and what I love is that when I started TV for myself, it actually took me a while, but I started putting as seen on TV on our postcard and then a little screenshot of the commercial. You can tell it's me on camera. They correlate the brand with the TV commercial. And we found when we did that, our results started increasing from direct mail, our response rate. And a lot of our clients do that as well. And it's just a simple thing. It's just adding, as seen on TV with some of the stations that we run on, and then a little clip of, screenshot of me on the commercial. And it's just crazy what TV can do for your other marketing channels. That's something that a lot of people don't understand is TV is great for branding, it's great for, direct response, but how much it helps your other marketing campaigns is pretty crazy. Because again, direct mail, people will call us and say, we called you because of your TV commercials. And then when we ask people when they get us from other marketing channels, whether it's Facebook, Google, or whatever, they're like, well, have you ever seen our TV commercial? I'm like, oh yeah, we've seen it. And so, especially being on the air for so long, but even some of our clients that have only been on for 6 months, like people will notice them at restaurants and start talking to them. And we actually had a client that 3 months in from his TV commercial, someone approached him at the gym and was like, hey, you're on TV. And within a short amount of time, they were investing, $500,000 in their projects. So there's a lot of power in TV, not only from direct response and getting deals directly, but just the indirect effects it has on everything else.
Well, one of the things I can speak from personal experience, I told you earlier, I would do radio and TV in a heartbeat. We're looking for real estate investors specifically nationwide. and I couldn't afford to advertise in every city in the nation on TV. So it's not something we could ever, I looked into it, I just can't financially make it work. However, I can sort of relate that with YouTube. This video here is going to be on YouTube, and we can't directly attribute our YouTube spend with leads. It doesn't tie, it's really hard. We don't get very many leads at all directly from YouTube. However, when we increase our YouTube spend, we see everything else go up. And we can absolutely correlate the numbers. If I spend an extra $3,000 on YouTube in a month, I see all the other 10 marketing channels all get better. We take the YouTube down, they go down. And we've done it enough now, we know it's tied together. And I think it's just because it's the credibility. It's the same thing. It's a little different because it's online. Somebody's got to find you, but they've seen you. You got credibility, and then all of a sudden they think, hey, these guys sound pretty good. I think I might want to go check out their website or something, you know?
Yeah, that's the hard thing with marketing is like, even with Facebook, over the years, our Facebook return hasn't been the greatest. We get anywhere from 1 to 3 times return on investment. I think last year the year before was like 1.5, maybe 2 at the best. And so we ended up turning it off. And then after having discussions with our clients, we do masterminds and a lot of value adds for our clients that are in our program, I started like thinking, you know, maybe I need to start creating more of that omnipresence, even with marketing channels that don't work quite as well. So in my opinion, something like TV for sure, but like even Facebook ads, YouTube TV or YouTube ads, like you mentioned, things that people get to know you better, get to see you more, especially with Facebook. You can get hundreds of thousands of impressions per month with a small ad spend. And I would never recommend doing that, you know, as a new investor or as something you just want to have Facebook as your main lead channel. Maybe it could be, but something like that where you're adding things on, you're getting a lot of extra views, could be, you know, Facebook could be helping TV, right? And so actually, interesting enough, we relaunched Facebook and we're getting probably about a 3 to 4 times return on investment. So we're doing a little bit better now. I guess my point is kind of tacking on to what you said, is sometimes when you look at marketing campaigns, you can't always attribute the effect it's having. Because people call you directly, they may tell you that they're calling you because of TV or because of direct mail or whatever, but they may have seen another marketing channel that helped that lead source that they said that they came from.
Right. So there's 2 points I want to make that's related to that. First of all, when it comes to marketing in general, now granted, I'm going to qualify this with you have to have enough level of success where you can afford to have a marketing budget. So a guy's just starting out that has no money, this conversation probably doesn't apply. If he's trying to do it with no money, he's got to go do sweat equity type stuff till he gets some money flowing. But for the guy that's past the sweat equity, he's ready to spend some money on marketing, you need to establish a monthly marketing budget that's your baseline no matter what. And you identify, I'm going to do this level and I'm just going to do it every month. Not that you don't measure it, you still try to measure, but you can't always measure everything. You just need to keep doing stuff and putting yourself out there. Related to that also is different people respond to different things. And this is a huge point. That's why it's important to do different marketing channels, because you cannot control, and I always use the example, this is back to my direct mail plug, but it relates to everything we're talking about. A large demographic in the real estate investor space are old people that are either they're dying or they're moving into nursing homes or whatever. And those people, they move out of their house, and no matter what happens to the economy, that still happens. People still die and get old. So you're always going to have that group of people to go after. And then secondly, those houses tend to be not fixed up, tend to be old, the kind of houses, they tend to have a lot of equity. So that's a good target. Everybody targets those kind of people, at least when they're targeting like in direct mail. That's lists that we pull are always targeting those kind of people. Well, the guy that's 75 years old is probably not going to Google to sell his house and respond to an ad. He might be watching TV, he might call TV you don't know. Some guys will, some guys won't. But every single person goes to their mailbox and gets their mail. Well, it's the same with all markets. So you never know. Everybody's different. The younger generation tends to be more digital, so they might respond to more digital things. You just don't know, and everybody's different. So no matter what, no matter how well you're doing in any one channel, you are missing out on all the people that don't respond to that kind of a channel. So to do multi-channels just makes sense. And the bigger you get and the more you want to grow, the more you need to do that to cover the market as completely as you possibly can. And when you're doing that, because it's not all measurable, you need to just establish budgets, say, I'm just going to do this. Do your best you can to tweak it based on whatever data you can get. try to improve it. But at some point, you just got to say, you know what, I'm just doing this. Overall, the numbers are working. I'm getting enough deals. I'm making money. And so the marketing must be working. That's kind of where I'm at as a business right now. We track a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff we can't track, but the overall thing's going really well. So I'm saying it ain't broke. We're not going to change it. We're going to keep this base thing going. So that's a huge point. A lot of people don't get that. When these boardroom masterminds, not just the boardroom, but I'm in a couple other masterminds. What happens, a lot of masterminds have hot seats. So you get somebody up in front of the group and they tell their story, and then the group tries to advise them on what to do to get better. And you'll hear guys saying, yeah, I'm doing PPC, it's killing it, I'm doing great. I want to grow, but I can't seem to, just can't get any bigger, it's all I'm getting. That's because they've maxed out that marketing channel, but they don't want to consider another marketing channel for whatever reason. They're locked in, and that's the mistake they're making.
Yeah, for sure. And to touch on, I think you were talking about targeting and how direct mail is very targeted, which it is. And with TV, people are like, well, that's more of a shotgun approach. But the great thing about TV is that if you look at the demographic, I wish I had this study I could pull up. There's a study of people 55 and older, and they surveyed them and they asked them why they went online to search. People said that like over 50% of the time, the number one reason they did an online search was TV commercials. So these were people, again, 55 older, houses 300,000 or less, and household income 150,000 or less. It's our perfect demographic. Another statistic was how long they watch TV. That same demographic, 55 and older, and owned homes less than 300,000. They watch TV an average of 2.5 hours a day. I think that's low because, think about it. Like if someone asked how much I watch TV, I watch it with my wife because she loves to watch TV. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even watch TV. But I probably watch way more TV than I actually think that I do. So I think that number is probably actually higher. And not to mention, they're probably doing it while they're cooking and they're not counting that time, right? So I remember when I did acquisitions, when I first started TV commercials, I was paying attention more to the TVs. And the TV was on a lot of the time when I'd go into houses. So to wrap up, my thought here is that TV is targeted from a standpoint of we are hitting our demographic. Most of the people that are watching, or a good majority of the people that are watching TV are our demographic. And then we hit them with shows that we know that they're most likely watching, right?
That's a great point. I didn't think about that. I think you taught me something. I didn't know that, but that's great. So that
Jerry
is kind
Springer.
of yes.
Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
To give you a little bit of our formula, like a Jerry Springer, it's lower income. And so that shows like that do very well.
Well, no question, people that get older watch more TV too, because I'm 62 years old and I'm to the age where everybody's asking me when I'm going to retire. Retirement scares me. I have no interest in doing that. And one of the reasons it scares me is I envision myself sitting there watching TV all day, and I have no interest in doing that.
Yeah.
But if I had nothing else to do, probably wouldn't be watching a lot of TV, The older you get, your body breaks down. You may not be able to walk very well, whatever. They're sort of forced to watch TV. I went through this. I've got both my parents have died and my grandparents, but when they were still alive, every one of them ended up in a nursing home, and nobody wants to live in a nursing home, but they fought it. But I faced myself, people moving out of houses and having to deal with a house, and they didn't want to move out. They wanted to stay in their house, but eventually they did. And most of them had nothing to do all day but watch TV all day.
Yep.
So at some point when they still were in their house, they're still watching a lot of TV, and they could have been motivated to make that phone call to the guy that wants to buy the house. Or tell us, the kids, hey, I saw this ad on TV about this guy, you ought to call that guy, that kind of thing. Who knows where it goes,
Actually, that's a good point. We actually have gotten many houses and leads throughout the years where people like, Tom told me to call you. And I always thought it was like people maybe I knew that I couldn't remember. And then after a while, it started clicking. Oh, people are probably seeing our TV commercials. And then when Bob down the street says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house, someone's like, oh, I see that Professional Home Buyers. You should go check them out, kind of thing.
Well, it's also when people get older, again, I've done this, I know this personally, not every case, but in my case, they start relying on my expertise, the son or the son-in-law, to do anything because they don't know or they're a little unsure or whatever. And they'll say, hey, I think we need to sell the house, but maybe you should call this guy. They don't want to do it themselves. They want me to help them do it,
Yeah.
So I think that happens. Anyway, it's all good. I think we've covered just about every topic there is to cover. You got anything else we haven't covered?
No, I don't think so. I think again, a lot of investors, when a marketing channel doesn't work, either they're maybe using the wrong vendor. It could be lead management, right? I think lead management we touched on is a big one. But sometimes you just have to be really patient. It's interesting because we call it 10x TV, right? So I call it 10X TV for many reasons, but our slogan is get in front of 10 times more people, 10 times faster with 10 times more credibility than most other marketing channels. And, sometimes clients will launch and they're like, man, we're only getting a 6X ROI in like the first 3 months. Like, what's wrong here? And we're like, what are you talking about? And, they're like, well, you're 10X TV. We should be getting 10 times return. I'm like, no, we have some clients that are doing 10X return on their investment. I guess my point is, sometimes expectations can be really high. And I think the rule of thumb for most marketing channels is if you're getting a 3 times return on investment, you're doing okay. But sometimes even if you're getting a 2 times return on investment in the first 3 to 6 months, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if people stick with us more than 6 months, the amount of people that stay with us is dramatically higher than if they quit before the 6-month mark.
I believe that. In my opinion, is because of the overall lift factor, the credibility factor, I'd go as far as say if you're just covering your cost, you still ought to keep doing it.
Exactly.
Because I think there's a lift everywhere else that you can't measure, but it's real.
Yeah, exactly. You're totally right. If you're getting a 1 to 2 times return, even in the first 6 months, it's like you're still getting hundreds, or not hundreds of thousands, but you're getting thousands of impressions that are helping your other marketing. And it's just setting them up for maybe there's going to be some big hits in the next 3 months. So we actually had a client one time. He was getting under a 3 times return, or right about a 3 times return. He wasn't super happy. He's like, I'm doing all these other channels, they're getting higher returns. And I was like, just stick with it. This was like 2.5 years ago. And 2.5 years later, it's his #1 marketing channel, and took about 3 additional months. So it took about a 9-month mark before it really started clicking. And I think somewhere between the 9th and 12th month, he did a $100,000 deal that paid for his whole year of ad spend. He's done at least another $100,000 deal since then.
Well, there's a hidden point there that we didn't really talk about, but I think it's real. And that's got to do with, in marketing, the general rule is you got to hit, I've heard for my entire career, and it's been a long career, you have to hit someone somewhere between 7 and 13 times to get their attention. Well, to your point about sticking with it, the more you stick with it, the more chance they're going to have heard about you over and over and over again. And eventually it's like in the back of your mind, yeah, that's the guy. And they can remember you too. I remember I said earlier in the call, marketing is all about getting someone to remember you when it's time for them to act on what you're offering. Well, it might take 10 times or 20 times in their head before they remember you. It might take 9 months because they're not necessarily hearing you every single time in every single ad. But eventually they do, and all of a sudden you're the guy and you're the only guy they think of. And that's got to get better over time.
I can't tell you how many times, because I own a lot of rental properties, I can't tell how many times I've gotten a direct mail piece. I get it once and that's it. They don't do a second, they don't do a third. It's all about consistency and just dedication to it.
Well, that's why, because most people, and we see this all the time, I don't know if you experience this, I'm guessing you don't, because I would think you kind of have a higher level investor that we even consider radio and TV. So you probably have a little bit better stick ratio. But we get a lot of people that are beginners at doing their first thing. And they do that. They say, okay, I got $2,000. And even though we say that's not enough, you need to spend more than that to give yourself a chance. They'd say, well, that's all I got. Let's do it. Let's try it. They do one mailing and you never hear from them again. Yep. And we even had people do a mailing, make a profit, it's successful, and they still don't do it again for whatever reason. And they're gone. So that's just, most of the competitors, I don't know what the actual percentages are in real estate, but in all businesses nationwide, I do know this, 92% of people go out of business in the first 5 years. So that's a true statistic. And the people that last 5 years, another 92% don't last the second 5 years. It's a very small percentage of businesses that actually last 10 years in our world in the United States. And in real estate investing, I think it's probably even worse numbers because it doesn't require any money up front to get started. A lot of people don't take it seriously, so they really don't give it the true college try. They give it kind of a half-assed try, and then they're gone, But that's your competition. So that's part of being regular is most of your competition is going to quit. So if you stick with it, over time, you're going to be the guy that people remember.
Yeah, 100%.
And by the way, that's another point in marketing, okay? And we're seeing it now. This happened before 2008, and it's happening again. Before 2008, the real estate investor graph kept going up and up and up, and there's more and more real estate investors, more and more competition. And then the crash happened, and most of them got wiped out, and it kind of went reset. Well, since the crash, since 2010, it's been growing again. It's still growing. We see more and more investors, but that's more competition. And so there's only so many deals to be had in any given market. So you're really out there, not so much trying to find the deals, you're trying to beat the competition to those deals. And part of beating people is being frequent, being in front of the prospect more than the other guys. And it's handling the phone calls, being in front of them, being good at doing what you say you're going to do. All these things factor into you beating the competitor that isn't good at any of that stuff.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. So if anybody wants to dial in TV, we'd love to help them. You guys can go to 10xtv.co, not .com, but co, 10xtv.co. We only allow so many people per market. So if you guys want to go there and fill out the application, book a call with us, we can let you know if your market's available, how much the ad spend is going to be in your market, and the area it's going to cover. TV covers a pretty wide area, which is good because I feel like our best deals, in fact, we just had one today that we negotiated the sale on. We'll make about $50,000 on a $150,000 house in a smaller market outside of the Wichita area. A lot of people are scared of that because they're like, man, I don't want to go, so far out. When I say so far out, we're talking about maybe an hour, 45 minutes into an hour. But some of those are the best deals that we've done because a lot of people don't want to go out that far. So.
Yeah, that's a competition thing. That feeds on what I was talking about. All right, well, great. It's just been great, Tony. Yeah, I highly recommend these guys. Just like I say, you should be using direct mail. You ought to be supplementing your direct mail with radio and TV if you've got the kind of business that you think that'll work for you. So I think it'd be a great mix.
Awesome. Thanks for the conversation, Jeff. Good stuff covered. And hopefully everyone got some good value.